I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room when my phone rang. It was my only daughter, Angela. The moment I heard her voice, I felt something was wrong. It was flat, cold, stripped of warmth. "Mom," she said, "we're leaving for Europe tomorrow. I already sold your beach house and your car. We needed the money. Bye." And just like that, the line went dead. 40-5 years of raising her. 45 years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, scraped knees, school lunches, birthdays, and unconditional love, and she discarded me with a phone call that lasted less than a minute. I sat there in that stiff green plastic chair, surrounded by coughing strangers and the smell of antiseptic. And instead of crying, I did something unexpected. I smiled, because there was something my daughter didn't know. My name is Antonia Brooks. I'm 71 years old, and until that moment, I thought I knew my daughter. 6 months earlier, I had become a widow. My husband, Robert, died of a heart attack while we were eating breakfast just like we had every morning for 45 years. He poured my coffee, added cream, toasted the bread, kissed my forehead, and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were his last words. After that, Angela suddenly became very present. Or so I believed. She visited 3 times a week, helped with funeral arrangements, walked with me through grocery store aisles, even suggested I see a doctor. "You need to take better care of yourself now that you're alone," she'd say, smiling. I thought it was love. Now I understood it. Was convenience. The beach house she sold so casually had been our sanctuary. Robert and I bought it when Angela was 15, after years of saving and sacrifice. Every summer, every birthday, even Christmas, sometimes we built our family there. I cooked, I cleaned, I welcomed everyone with open arms. I never imagined she saw it as nothing more than cash. And the truck, that old Ford pickup Robert treated like family, washed every Sunday, parked in the same shaded spot, the last thing that still smelled like him. She knew what it meant to me. When she hung up, something shifted inside me. A calm settled in, a strange, steady clarity I hadn't felt since Robert died, because suddenly I remembered something I had forgotten. 3 days before his death, Robert had handed me a manila envelope. "Antonia," he said, "put this in your dresser drawer. If something happens to me, open it later, only when you're ready." I had tucked it away and, in my grief, forgotten all about it. Until now. The nurse called my name. The doctor said I was healthy for my age, just needed more rest and better food. I nodded. But my mind was already home, locked on that envelope. I walked to the bus stop. According to Angela, I no longer had a car. The irony made me smile. She thought she'd left me with nothing. She had no idea who she was dealing with. Robert had always planned ahead. On the bus ride home, I watched the city slide past the window. Houses, shops, people rushing through their own silent struggles. Everyone carrying secrets. I had one too. When I got home, I went straight to my bedroom, opened the dresser drawer. There it was, the envelope, untouched. My name written in Robert's careful handwriting. I sat on the bed we had shared for decades. The room was filling with shadows, but they didn't scare me anymore. I opened the envelope slowly, and everything changed. Inside were deeds, bank statements, legal documents, and a handwritten letter. "My dear Antonia," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. Forgive me for keeping this from you. I wanted to protect you." He had invested our savings, quietly, carefully. For years, we didn't just own the beach house. We owned 6 other properties, a downtown condo, a coastal motel, multiple houses, and the 20-story apartment building where Angela and her husband lived. We owned shares in 3 companies. I was wealthy. Stunned, I flipped through the documents. Everything was registered under a company Robert had created, and I was the sole heir. Robert, the bus driver, the man who counted pennies and skipped luxuries, had multiplied everything in silence. In his letter, he explained why, if Angela ever knew. He wrote she would change. I wanted her love to be real. The irony was almost poetic. She abandoned me thinking I was broke when in reality, I had everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered the house, touching furniture Angela had mocked, looking at old photos, one of her at 5 years old, laughing on Robert's lap. When did she stop being that child? The next morning. The phone rang again. It was Angela. Her voice was softer now, sweeter. Mom, how are you? Mom, I just wanted to let you know we've already transferred the money from the house and the car, Angela said, her voice suddenly sweet, almost rehearsed. We deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it should help you live for a few months while you look for something smaller. My share, I repeated, keeping my voice steady. Yes, Mom, of course we weren't going to leave you with nothing. We gave you 30%. That's fair. Right, we need the rest for our investment in Europe. Edward found an incredible opportunity over there. 30% of my own life. How generous, I see. I said softly, and when do you leave? This afternoon. Our bags are already packed. We'll be gone at least 6 months, maybe longer if things go well. But don't worry, Mom, when we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment, something that fits your needs, fits my needs. All right, Angela, have a safe trip. Oh, Mom, I knew you'd understand. You've always been so compassionate. We love you so much. And then she hung up. I stood there holding the phone, and for the first time in months, I laughed. Not a polite laugh, not a sad one. I laughed out loud. The kind of laughter that surprises even yourself. The situation was so absurd, it was almost brilliant. My daughter had robbed me. Sold my memories, spoken to me like a child, and funded a European fantasy she barely understood. But the money wasn't what hurt the most. What hurt was how easily she erased me. 45 years of devotion. And she reduced it to a 2-minute phone call. I checked my bank account. The amount they'd deposited looked generous if you ignored what they'd taken. They'd sold the beach house quickly, far below its real value. Robert's truck had been practically given away. That afternoon, I watched from my kitchen window. As Angela and Edward loaded their suitcases into a cab he carried to massive bags, she held a sleek, expensive carry-on. They laughed, kissed, talked excitedly about their future. They never looked up at my window, never said goodbye when the cab disappeared down the street. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and Robert's documents spread before me. I could have gone straight to court, reclaimed everything, punished them, but something inside me whispered, there's a better way, a more instructive way. I called Mr. Peterson. The lawyer who had handled Robert's affairs. He'd attended the funeral, shaken my hand, and told me to call if I ever needed him. Now I did. Mrs. Brooks, he said warmly, it's good to hear from you. How are you holding up? I'm well, Mr. Peterson, but I need to see you urgently. I found some documents Robert left me. Come by tomorrow morning. We'll go through everything. That night, I slept deeply. I dreamed of Robert sitting in his old chair, newspaper in hand. When he looked up at me, he smiled. It's about time, my love, he said. About time you stood up for yourself. I woke up with something I hadn't felt in months. Not happiness, not grief. Determination. The next morning, I dressed carefully. The wine-colored dress Robert loved, a touch of makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked strong. Mr. Peterson's office was downtown, marble floors and tall windows. He smiled when I arrived, but when he saw the documents, his expression changed completely. Mrs. Brooks, this is extraordinary. Robert was a very clever man, I know. I said, what I need to know is what I can do. He confirmed everything. The assets were real. The ownership was legal, and the sale of the beach house completely illegal. "We can reclaim it immediately," he said, "and pursue fraud charges against your daughter." "No," I replied. "I don't want to do it that way." He paused. "What do you have in mind?" "I want everything recovered quietly. I want control of all my properties, especially the building where my daughter lives, and I want no one to know I'm behind it. Not yet." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "It will take time, but it can be done. Perfect." When I left his office, the city looked different, brighter. Alive, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was planning. The following weeks were surreal. Officially, I was a poor widow abandoned by her only child. Quietly, I was reclaiming my life piece by piece. Mr. Peterson updated me regularly. Papers filed, transfers reversed, ownership restored. I stayed in my house, every morning. I ate breakfast at the same table Robert and I had shared. For decades, I took walks through the neighborhood. People looked at me with sympathy, curiosity, whispered concern. One afternoon, my neighbor Aurora stopped me while I watered the plants. "Antonia, dear, is it true Angela went to Europe and left you alone?" "Yes," I said calmly. "She and Edward have business plans." Aurora shook her head. "And how will you manage, sweetheart? We all know Robert handled everything." I smiled gently. "I'll be just fine," I said, "better than fine." And as I stood there in the sunlight, hose in hand, watching water soak into the soil, I realized something beautiful. They thought they had taken everything from me, but in reality, I had never been richer. "Didn't leave much money," Aurora said softly, her voice lowering like she was afraid the words themselves might hurt me. "If you only knew," I thought. "Don't worry, Aurora, I'll be fine," I said, offering the same gentle smile I'd perfected by then. "Do you need anything? I can bring you food, help with groceries." "You're very kind," I replied, "but I'm really fine." She looked at me with that familiar expression, the one I'd seen too many times. Since the funeral, compassion mixed with relief, sympathy tempered by gratitude that this wasn't her life falling apart. "Well, you know where to find me if you need anything." And just like that, the moment passed. Those conversations became routine. The butcher, the baker, the woman at the corner store. Everyone spoke to me in that soft, careful tone reserved for the unfortunate. I nodded, I smiled, I thanked them, but inside, I was almost amused. It felt like living a double life. One Wednesday morning, Mr. Peterson called Mrs. Brooks. "I have good news." I sat up straighter. I was able to nullify the sale of the beach house. The buyers were unaware the transaction was fraudulent, so their money was returned without issue. "The house is yours again." "Excellent, Mr. Peterson. And the building where Angela lives, that's more complicated. Technically, you've always been the owner through the company. But we need to make some administrative changes so you'll have direct control. That should take about 2 weeks. Perfect. Keep me informed." After the call, I sat alone in my kitchen, coffee growing cold in my hands, thinking about Angela. She'd been in Europe for 3 weeks. Not a call, not a message, not even a postcard. To her, I had stopped existing the moment she got what she wanted. But I knew that silence wouldn't last. I decided to visit the beach house. I took the bus to the coast. The same route Robert and I had traveled hundreds of times. The house stood exactly as I remembered it, small, cream-colored, with a porch that faced the ocean like it was still watching for us. The new owners had added a few potted plants, but otherwise, nothing had changed. I sat on the curb across the street and watched it for an hour. Memories flooded in. Angela running barefoot across the sand, laughing as she built crooked castles. Robert grilling fish while I prepared salads inside. Friends, boyfriends, birthdays, sunsets, a lifetime, all of it reduced to a rushed transaction. An older man stepped out of the house and noticed me sitting there. "Are you all right, ma'am?" Yes, I said quietly. I'm just remembering. I knew the former owners, I added. Very well, his face softened. What a shame what happened. They told us the elderly lady was very sick and needed to sell quickly. We thought we were getting a great deal. But it turns out the sale wasn't legal. We had to give the house back. Did you know them personally? He asked. No, everything was handled through intermediaries. They said the daughter was in charge because the mother couldn't manage anymore. What a sad situation, if you only knew how. Sad, I thought. Well, I said aloud, I'm glad you didn't lose your money. Yes, thankfully, though we really liked this house. I left with a heaviness in my chest. It wasn't just about the money, it was the lie. Angela had told strangers I was sick, weak, incapable. She had erased my humanity and replaced it with a convenient story. That night, I called Mr. Peterson. Again, I need your help with something else. I said, I want Robert's truck back too. He hesitated. That will be more difficult. The truck was in your name. But your daughter had power of attorney when she sold it. How is that possible? Apparently, you signed it a few months after your husband's death, and suddenly I remembered. The papers, Angela standing in my kitchen, saying it was just paperwork to help with funeral arrangements. I had signed without reading, drowning in grief. That was when it all began. I understand, I said. Is there any way to reverse it? We can try, but we'd need to prove deception or coercion. Then let's do it, I said. I want everything back. The weeks that followed were unusual. In the mornings, I played my role, the lonely widow. I bought groceries, greeted neighbors, accepted their pity with grace, but in the afternoons, I transformed. I studied documents, learned financial terms I'd never imagined needing, spoke strategy with Mr. Peterson, planned. I discovered Robert had been far more brilliant than I ever knew. Every investment was intentional. The building Angela lived in wasn't just profitable, it was skyrocketing in value. And Edward was drowning in debt. He had taken loans against the apartment they lived in, never realizing he wasn't the true owner. When the banks discovered that everything would unravel one Friday, Mr. Peterson called. Mrs. Brooks, everything is complete. You now have full control of all your properties, and we recovered Robert's truck. Wonderful. There's more, he added. The buyer was an acquaintance when I explained the situation. He agreed to return it for a small compensation. Excellent work. Then I said, I need you to help me with one last thing. Yes, I want you to send my daughter a letter. What kind of letter? An eviction notice. Silence. Mrs. Brooks. Are you sure? Completely. She decided I didn't matter in her life. Now she's going to learn exactly how much I do. Should I send it to Europe? No, I said calmly. Give it to her when she gets back. I suspect that will be very soon. I was right. That same afternoon, Aurora rushed over, breathless with gossip. Antonia, did you hear? Edward is in trouble with the bank. My brother-in-law works there. They're investigating loans he took out using the apartment as collateral, but it turns out the apartment isn't his. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Yes. And it seems Angela didn't know anything about it. I smiled softly. The truth was finally catching up to them. Come back from Europe to sort out this mess. What a complicated situation. Yes, and the worst part, Aurora added, lowering her voice like it was a secret, is that Edward lied to her. There was no business in Europe, none at all. He just wanted to escape the debts he left behind. Double quotes perfect. Everything was unfolding exactly the way I had anticipated. Angela had trusted Edward completely. She had chosen him over me, sacrificed our relationship for him. And now, piece by piece, she was realizing that the man she defended so fiercely was never who she believed him to be. That night, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, staring up at the sky. The stars were sharp and bright, Robert used to say. That stars were the souls of people who had lived full lives, watching over the ones they loved. If that was true, then he was up there now quiet, steady watching his plan fall into place. Thank you. My love, I whispered to the night. Thank you for taking care of me. Even now, the next morning, Mr. Peterson called early. Mrs. Brooks, I have news. Your daughter has returned to the country. She arrived at the airport alone. Alone. Yes, Edward stayed in Europe. There are rumors they had a very serious fight. I see, and the letter. I'm sending it today. She should receive it tomorrow. I hung up and stood in the kitchen, my heart beating faster than it had in weeks, after so much quiet preparation. The first real move was finally happening. Angela was about to learn that her mother was not the helpless victim she imagined. She arrived at her apartment Tuesday night. I knew because Aurora, who seemed to have eyes everywhere, came to tell me the next day. Antonia, your daughter came back last night. I saw her one suitcase only. She looked terrible, pale. Dark circles under her eyes, like she cried the whole flight, completely alone. Aurora hesitated, then added, and something strange. She didn't have her keys. The doorman had to call the superintendent to let her in. Double quotes interesting. Edward had the keys, which meant he had chosen not to return. Or maybe Angela had discovered something and run. Either way, she was back, and very soon she would receive her welcome gift. That afternoon, Mr. Peterson called again. The letter was delivered an hour ago. The doorman confirmed she received it personally. Perfect. We've given her 30 days to vacate, as required by law. But Mrs. Brooks, are you sure you want to do this? She is your daughter. My daughter kicked me out of my own home with a 2-minute phone call, I said calmly. She sold my things without asking. She treated me like I was nothing. Now she's going to learn that actions have consequences. I understand, he said gently. I just wanted to be sure you'd considered everything. I have. Mr. Peterson, every last detail. That night, sleep refused to come. I lay awake imagining Angela opening the letter, the confusion, the disbelief, the slow rise of panic. She would think it was a mistake, a scam, something that could be fixed with a phone call, until she realized it was all very real. The next morning, at exactly 8 o'clock, my phone rang. Angela. Double quotes Mom, she said, her voice trembling. Mom, I need to talk to you. Please, good morning, honey. How was Europe? Mom, I don't have time for that. I got a letter yesterday. It says I have to vacate my apartment in 30 days. It has to be a mistake. Do you know anything about this? An eviction notice, I said softly. How strange. From whom? From a company I've never heard of. Wait, let me check. Robert Investments, Inc. Do you know that name? Robert had used his own name. How poetic. No, honey. I've never heard of it. Are you sure the letter is real? That's what I'm trying to find out. Mom, I need your help. Edward left me in Europe. He ran off with another woman. And now I come back to this. I don't understand what's happening. There it was. Edward had abandoned her probably when the money ran out, or when he realized the trouble waiting for him back home. Poor Angela. She had traded her family for a man who vanished the moment things became difficult. I'm so sorry, honey, I said gently. Where are you now? I'm in the apartment. For now, Mom, can I come see you? I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else. The irony was almost beautiful. Only now. When she had lost everything, did she remember she had a mother? Of course, honey, I said, come whenever you want. I'm on my way. I hung up and looked at myself in the mirror. I had to be perfect. I put on my conservative grey dress, tied my hair into a simple bun, and practiced the expression I needed: concerned, tired, resigned, the image of a fragile widow abandoned by her own child, exactly what Angela expected to see. She arrived an hour later. When I opened the door, even I was startled by how broken she looked, thinner, exhausted. Dark circles etched deep beneath her eyes. Her expensive clothes were wrinkled, neglected. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Mom," she said. For a moment, I thought she might hug me, but she stopped herself, as if remembering how she had left. "Come in, honey," I said softly. "Would you like some coffee?" "Yes, please." We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I had studied Robert's documents weeks earlier. Angela looked small in that chair, lost. Just like when she was a little girl coming to me with her school problems. "Mom, I'm so sorry for the way I left," she said. "I know I treated you badly. It's in the past, honey." "No, it's not," she said, her voice cracking. "I said horrible things. And now," she swallowed hard. "Now I have no one." What happened? With Edward. He left me for a 25-year-old hotel waitress in Paris. There was never any business. It was all a lie. He used the money from selling your house to fund his escape. All the debts. I asked quietly. Yes, so many debts. He'd been taking loans for years, using the apartment as collateral. But now I find out he wasn't even the owner. "How is that possible?" she whispered. And that was my opening. "I don't know, honey." I said calmly, "Property matters can be very complicated." Wind, leaving her stranded in a storm of his own making, and Angela was finally learning what it felt like to be powerless the way she had made me feel just weeks ago. I poured us both a cup of tea, watching her wring her hands, her face pale and tense. The desperation clinging to her like a heavy coat was almost beautiful in its irony. "You know, honey," I said gently, letting my voice tremble just slightly as if it were worn by worry. "Sometimes people make mistakes, big mistakes, but mistakes can be fixed if we know where to look." Angela looked up at me, hope flickering in her tired eyes. "You mean there's a way out of this?" "Yes," I said, keeping my expression calm, motherly, helpless even. "Your father, he always had a plan. Maybe there's something left that can help you." Her gaze fell to the envelope in my hands. I let her take it, letting her excitement build. She examined the small key and read the letter again, her hand shaking slightly. "Tomorrow," I said slowly, savoring the tension, "we'll go to the bank. Maybe there's something in that safety deposit box that can help you get back on your feet." Her eyes widened, and for the first time in months, she looked at me like she really needed me. Not like a mother who had money, not like someone who could fix things instantly, just like a child clinging to a parent. And I let her. That night, I lay awake thinking about the coming day. I had already regained everything: my house, my truck, my properties, and my control over the apartment building where Angela lived. I had the power to teach her a lesson not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. She needed to learn the difference between being poor by choice and being poor by consequence. The next morning, we set out for the bank. I let her lead, letting her think she was taking charge of her destiny, while I stayed quietly behind, the calm anchor in the storm. Inside the central bank, I handed over the key and the envelope to the clerk. They opened the safety deposit box, and Angela gasped. Inside were documents, bank statements, investment papers, and a ledger of debts, everything Edward had hidden. And at the bottom, a note in Robert's handwriting. "Antonia, use this too. Teach your daughter the value of responsibility and integrity. Love, always." Angela's face went pale as she read through the papers. The reality hit her. Every debt Edward left behind could be resolved because the accounts, the assets, and the truth were all here. She turned to me, eyes wide, trembling. "Mum, I had no idea." "I know, honey," I said softly, "and now you understand. But understanding isn't enough. You have to take responsibility." You have to fix what you can and learn from what you cannot, she nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. And in that moment, I realized that the true lesson wasn't about money or houses or debts. It was about respect, consequence, and the bond between a mother and daughter that could never truly be broken. For the first time, Angela wasn't looking at me as someone to manipulate or dismiss. She was looking at me as the person I had always been, strong, patient, and unshakable, and I smiled, because this time I held all the cards and she would never forget it. If you want, I can continue and write the final showdown and resolution, showing exactly how Angela learns her lesson and how Antonia fully reclaims her life and dignity. Do you want me to continue? Her voice deep and raw, and it cut through the carefully maintained facade I had been keeping up. This was the moment I had been waiting for, not for vengeance. Not for revenge, but for understanding. She was finally seeing the weight of her choices. I sat beside her and gently put my hand over hers. Angela, the important thing isn't the past anymore. It's what you do now and how you learn from it. She nodded, her eyes glistening. I don't know if I can fix everything, Mom. I don't even know where to start. Start here, I said, pointing to the safety deposit box and the documents Robert had left. These are tools, honey. Tools to help you take responsibility, to make right what was wrong, and to rebuild your life with honesty. Tears streamed down her face, but now they were different, reflective, cleansing. She was no longer the cold, calculating daughter who had hung up on me from the doctor's office. She was a young woman confronting her mistakes, humbled by consequences, but ready to grow. Over the next few days, we worked together. I guided her through the financial documents, teaching her how to approach creditors, how to prioritize payments, and how to protect herself from Edward's manipulations. She learned quickly, but more importantly, she began to understand the human cost of greed, selfishness, and blind trust. One evening, while we were sitting at the kitchen table reviewing bank statements, she looked up at me. Mom, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you, or any of this help. I smiled, the first warm smile I'd felt since Robert passed. You're my daughter, Angela. You will always deserve love. But you must earn respect from yourself and from those around you. That's what you're doing now. The days turned into weeks, and Angela became more responsible, more cautious, and more aware. And while she still lived under the same roof as me, our relationship transformed. The power dynamic had shifted, not because I wanted revenge, but because she now understood the consequences of treating someone she loved like an obstacle. Finally, the day came when she looked at me and said softly, Mom, I understand now. I understand everything. And in that moment, I realized that the lesson had been delivered perfectly. She had faced her own recklessness, experienced vulnerability, and finally learned the value of trust, family, and responsibility. I reached across the table, took her hand, and whispered, Welcome back, Angela. Welcome back to the family and to yourself. Robert's plan, executed from beyond the grave, had worked flawlessly, and I, Antonia Brooks, widow, mother, and now quiet guardian of justice, finally felt at peace knowing that the woman my daughter had become was someone I could be proud of. If you want, I can also write a short, dramatic final chapter showing Angela fully rebuilding her life and how their mother-daughter bond is permanently strengthened, like a satisfying cinematic ending. Do you want me to do that? To fully face the consequences of her actions before she can truly understand the value of what she has and what she's lost. Sometimes love means letting someone hit the bottom before you lift them up. I smiled at Aurora, keeping my voice gentle. Exactly. She needs to understand responsibility, humility, and the real meaning of family. She has to earn her second chance, not just be handed one. Aurora nodded slowly. It's a hard lesson, but if anyone can guide her through it, it's you. She'll come out stronger and wiser. I sipped my tea, feeling a quiet satisfaction. Every step of the plan was unfolding perfectly. Angela was learning, slowly but surely, that life isn't about entitlement or shortcuts. And soon, when the legal processes were complete, she would be free from Edward's debts entirely without ever knowing that her mother had orchestrated the rescue. For now, she had her first taste of struggle, responsibility, and humility. And that, I thought, was worth more than any inheritance or safety deposit box could provide. The real transformation had begun, and this time it would last. If you want, I can write the final chapter showing Angela fully reborn financially, independent, wiser, and with a strong bond with her mother. The satisfying closure to this story. Do you want me to do that? Other way, Angela, because you needed to understand the weight of your choices, the consequences of blindly trusting others, and the value of responsibility. Because you needed to see that life doesn't hand lessons on a silver platter. You earn them. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were not just of despair, they were the tears of understanding, of awakening. I understand, Mom. I see now. I was so selfish, so blind. You didn't abandon me, you were teaching me. I nodded gently, letting her feel the weight of her own realization. Yes, honey. I gave you the chance to grow, to see what it means to take responsibility for your actions. And now you can start building your life again, not because someone saved you, but because you've learned how to stand on your own. Angela sank into her chair, overwhelmed, but a spark of relief and gratitude shone in her eyes. I don't even know how to thank you, Mom. I've caused you so much pain, and you gave me a second chance anyway. You don't need to thank me, I said, my voice soft but firm. What matters is that you've learned, and from now on, we move forward together, but differently. You'll rebuild, you'll earn trust. And you'll never forget this lesson. For the first time in weeks, Angela smiled, not the shallow, entitled smile of the past, but a genuine, humble smile of someone who had faced their mistakes and begun to change. And in that moment, I knew my plan had worked. She would never take me, or her life, for granted again. I reached out, and we held hands across the table. Not as the helpless mother and spoiled daughter, but as to women mother and daughter ready to face the world together, stronger and wiser than ever. If you want, I can finish this story with a powerful epilogue showing Angela fully reborn, financially secure, independent, and with a deep, respectful bond with her mother. It would give the narrative a satisfying closure. Do you want me to write that? Building downtown, she saw me at the bank paying off my debts and asked if I was the one who inherited all that from my mother. I told her yes, but that I was keeping the job because it's taught me more than any inheritance ever could. I looked up from my book and smiled at her. And what did she say? She laughed softly. She said I'm wise beyond my years now, that I understand the real value of life. Mom, I finally feel like I'm living for the right reasons, not just for comfort or status. I reached out and held her hand. That's exactly what I hoped you'd learn. The rest, money, property, possessions, those are just tools. The real treasure is the person you've become. Angela leaned back, exhausted but content, the weight of her mistakes finally replaced by understanding and purpose. I want to keep this lesson with me forever, Mom. I don't want to forget it. And I want to make sure I never make someone else suffer the way I did, or the way I suffered. I nodded. And you won't. You've changed, Angela. Not because of me, but because you faced the consequences and took responsibility. That is true strength. From that night on, our home wasn't just a shelter, it became a place of growth, respect, and partnership. Angela still had her cleaning job, still woke up early, still managed her small responsibilities, but she did it with dignity, purpose, and gratitude. And every evening when she came home, we sat together, talking, laughing, and planning the future. Not the easy future she had once imagined in Europe. A future earned, a future grounded in love, humility, and respect, and in that, I finally felt the peace of knowing that my daughter had truly learned the lesson that money alone could never teach, the value of life, family, and herself. If you want, I can write a final chapter showing Angela a year later successful, independent, and still deeply bonded with her mother, giving the story a cinematic, satisfying conclusion. Do you want me to do that? North side of town. What did you tell her? I said yes, that you have enough money for me not to have to work. And do you know what she asked next? She asked why I was still working. I told her it was because I needed to prove I could stand on my own 2 feet. She laughed, a soft, knowing laugh. Honey, she said, that's the difference between being rich and acting rich. Your mom, she taught you how to be truly rich. Mrs. Johnson had a wisdom that settled into your bones. She made me see something I hadn't understood before. It's not about the money you have. It's about how you use it, how you relate to it. Angela sat down beside me on the sofa, her eyes serious. Mom, she said, I've made a decision. I'm going to stay here with you, but not as a daughter coming back home. I want to be a grown woman choosing to share her life with her mother. What's the difference? I asked. The difference, she said, is that I'm going to pay my share, contribute to the house. Treat this relationship as a partnership between 2 independent women who love and respect each other. You don't have to. I said. Double quotes. Yes, I do. I want our relationship to be different. Before, I took your love for granted. Now, I want to value it, care for it. For the first time, Mom, I want to protect what's most important in my life, and your job. I'll keep working. But I'm not going to clean offices forever. I want to go back to school, step by step. I want to earn every opportunity to do something meaningful. Her eyes sparkled. Social work, she said. I want to help women who are going through what I went through, who feel alone. I want to use what we have to make a difference. I felt a rush of pride. She hadn't just learned to value what she had, she'd learned to transform it into something greater. And Edward, I asked gently, he's been arrested in France, she said, for the fraudulent marriage. Deportation is coming. But honestly, Mom, I don't care. That chapter is over. No resentment. None. Edward did me a favor without even knowing it. If he hadn't abandoned me, I never would have hit rock bottom. And if I hadn't, I never would have learned to truly value what I have. That night, I went to bed completely at peace. My plan had worked. Angela had emerged from the storm stronger, wiser, compassionate. Robert would have been proud. 6 months later, life found a new rhythm. Angela excelled in her social work studies, and I started a foundation to help women facing domestic violence and financial abandonment. One morning, she came into the kitchen with an envelope in her hands. Mom, I've been accepted into the master's program. I start next semester, but I'll pay with my own savings. Every penny I've earned from my city job. Her independence was inspiring. She had learned to live with the essentials, to value every dollar, to honor her own work. Aurora came by that afternoon, as she did every Friday. At first, she said, pouring herself tea, I thought you were cruel to Angela, but now I think you were the wisest mother ever. Look at her. I did, and it was true. The girl who left for Europe months ago had returned as a woman whose serenity came from within, whose confidence was earned, not given. She's buying vegetables for a family she's helping. Aurora whispered, with her own money, and when I asked why, she said some things can't be measured in budgets. That night, Angela and I sat on the porch. It had become our ritual, our time to reflect, to dream, to simply exist together, Mom. She said, cutting her salad, I got a strange letter today. From Edward, I asked, my muscles tensing. From prison in France. He regrets everything and wants forgiveness. And how did you feel? Nothing. No anger, no sadness, no desire for revenge. That Angela no longer exists, this Angela. She has nothing to say to him. Her voice carried strength, the kind that comes only from falling and rising on your own. Mom, she said softly. True love isn't the one that tells you what you want to hear. True love teaches you what you need to learn even when it hurts. Edward told me what I wanted. You taught me what I needed. That night, I sat on the porch alone, watching stars. I thought of Robert. I had promised to take care of our daughter, and I finally knew I had. Not with money, but with lessons, not with solutions, but with guidance to find her own. The next day, we visited the beach house. Angela paused at the truck, gazing at the place where family summers had been lived, birthdays celebrated, love built. It looks the same, she said. But I am not the same person who sold this house. Inside, she touched the furniture, the photos, memories of a life nearly lost. I want to apologize for reducing all of this to money. It's forgiven, I said. This house, it carries 40 years of family. Dad built the porch, you planted the garden, you learned to swim here, and you turned it all into lessons, not just transactions. She smiled, tears in her eyes. Together, we cooked, cleaned, fixed small things. A ritual of reconnection, not just with the house, but with the values it represented. When the sun set, we sat on the porch, looking at the ocean. Mom, I have a proposal, Angela said. What is it? I want us to turn this house into a shelter for women leaving domestic violence, a place to rebuild their lives. I nodded. Robert would have loved this, sharing a sanctuary, turning home into hope. We returned that night. Transformed, mother and daughter, not bound by obligation, but by choice. Two women building a life together based on love, respect, and purpose. That night, I whispered to Robert in the dark, we did it, my love. She finally understands. And I felt his answer. As if he had always been listening. Justice had arrived not as revenge, but as education. Not as punishment, but as transformation. We had gained something more valuable than money. An authentic, unshakable bond. Did you like the story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If this story touched you, you can support me with a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this on your screen. You'll see 2 new life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more waiting on my channel. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story. With love and respect.